Hello, everybody. It is draft week at Rotoworld and NBC Sports. This is our first of many, many mock drafts. We are starting with a 0.5 PPR. You know, this is the format for if you don't quite want it to only be about touchdowns, but you're a little scared, a full point per reception. This is the great middle ground. It's honestly probably the best scoring format. It's not the scoring format that I use, but it's really, really good middle of the road. You can't really go wrong with any different strategy. We've got a lot of expert drafters here, including Yahoo's Andy Behrens, Fantasy Life's Ian Hartitz, Rotoworld's Denny Carter, myself, Patrick Daugherty from Rotoworld, joined by a lot of our friends helping us off screen to just draft some really, really good teams. And listen, Denny's got the first spot, which I'm sure is giving him anxiety. I have the 10th pick, which is giving me far greater anxiety. But Andy Behrens, very curiously, a video came on right at the beginning where you told me the 10th pick was delightful. And you said, don't let anyone tell you different. And that's the most amazing pick you could ever have. And why is that? And why do you lie to your viewers? Why do you lie to our consumers about having the 10th pick being good?
First of all, I can't believe that you gave me the 9th pick where I'm considered most dangerous. That's crazy. I'm pretty sure I didn't hype the 10th pick. I might have, but usually I try to find a way to not... You know, you want to make people feel okay, like winning is still possible. But there is, like, when you start looking at the history of different draft slots, and you're tasked with the weird responsibility of giving people pep talks before their draft, you do find that, like, the first half of the draft is definitely where you want to be historically. There are small differences. It's not a huge difference. You can win from anywhere, but
no, let's be real. You can't
little
win
bit more away.
Spot, but yeah,
you can't actually. Like 4 people did it last year.
You know where you can win from is if you read rotoworld.com, if you read Yahoo. We have experts galore, and we've been partnered up for years, but we're closer than ever this season, and fantasy football season just got so much better. $1 million better. Create or join a Yahoo fantasy league and enter the $1 million NBC sweepstakes, plus earn extra entries to win when players on your fantasy roster score a touchdown during an opening weekend game on NBC or Peacock. Download the redesigned Yahoo Fantasy app, which I refresh every 5 seconds, or go to NBCSports.com/fantasy million to learn more. So we love Andy. We love Yahoo. Denny, I doubt, loves the first pick. Denny, you know, he's in hives. He's dry sweating. Or that's not a thing. But he wants to take a wide receiver. And now he feels like he needs to take Christian McCaffrey, but who's not practicing. I'm sure it's totally fine. I'm sure he's not hitting the age or usage cliffs at all at age 28 heading into 2024. Denny, since we've had like a real home league draft, we've had several false starts and paused 3 times.
Yeah.
So you've had a lot of time to think about this pick. You've got about 40 seconds to make it. What are you thinking here at 1-1?
Right. I mean, you guys have frozen me like a kicker in overtime. You know, and I don't
DJ,
know.
hit him with another timeout. Yeah.
I'm gonna take Roshan Johnson at this point. I'm just completely flummoxed. Yeah. I mean, look. You're gonna force me to take CMC, of course. Do I want to? Absolutely not. But you know,
maybe you just don't then.
I can't. I can't. It's against the rules.
His hands are tied.
I have no choice.
So you have no choice to select CMC number 1 for the 3rd time.
Yeah. So I'm taking him. Taking him.
CMC off the clock. Anthony Reimer immediately smashes the CD Lamb at 2, Tyreek Hill at 3. This is where the dilemmas really are this year. I just feel like I don't know what to do at any spot. Like, am I betting on another historic Tyreek Hill season? Am I betting on the age or injury cliff with CMC? Am I betting on CD Lamb, who hasn't practiced this summer? Breece Hall, who was good for 6 weeks last year. Yeah, I mean, I know he finishes like the RB2. Bijan and his issues, Justin Jefferson and his quarterback issues, Jamar Chase. It's just such a crazy year, Ian. And I think you're next. No, it's Andy Behrens is next. Well, Ian, are you Greg Dortch, wide receiver 1? Who are you? Yes. Are you on the clock right now? Okay, you actually are on the clock.
Wait, who is that? No, that is me. Okay, yeah. Bijan Robinson, come on down.
Bijan, would you have taken Breece if you were there? Because I feel like that is one of the hinge point questions of draft this year. Bijan versus Breece. I've been leaning Breece, but I've been feeling increasingly Bijan pilled. Would you have taken Breece if he was there, or were you happy with the Bijan stuff?
I'm actually team Bijan, completely out on Breece Hall this year. He's only my RB3, and, I got Bijan sitting there as a RB2. So, yeah, with Bijan, again, I'm just a little bit less worried about the Falcons' offense planning than I am the Jets. I mean, we have seen LaFleur use some committees, and, again, just a little more confident in Bijan, completely not messing everything up. But it's a toss-up. Plenty of smart guys like Breece, but, here today, give me Bijan.
Ian talking about the odds that the Jets offense might face plant as I pretty much make the decision to go with Garrett Wilson over Jonathan Taylor. I'm not quite ready to hit draft yet. I do have him top of my queue. So in case I panic and just like keep filibustering and talking, it will auto draft him for me. But listen, the Jets thing too, so the Jets, I like that they have these two elite weapons. I don't like that they don't have anyone else behind them at all. And people are talking up, myself, including Xavier Gibson. And the overall offensive environment, I feel like is worse than we even realize, because it can be easily papered over by having two superstars. So I do think the disaster potential is so high, but Garrett Wilson, he's just too good of a fit for that mind meld game that Aaron Rodgers played, last time he played football in 2018. And I just think the target, what he did with Zach Wilson and just how many targets it's going to be. At 10, it is possible to win if you take Garrett Wilson, in my opinion, Andy.
Hey, Pat, can you mute your sound the bottom before I unalive myself, please?
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
Wow. There we
Appreciate
go.
that.
Muted. Andy, at 9, A.J. Brown. That's who I was going to take if he had fallen. Why A.J. Brown over Jonathan Taylor or Garrett Wilson?
Yeah, kind of chalky pick. So far, everything is basically gone according to form. It was wild, by the way, to see Denny take an actual good player in a draft. I don't think I've ever seen it. That was crazy. Yeah, it's slightly into AJ Brown. Nothing significant. Obviously, if you want to find something that is questionable about Taylor's situation, it's the fact that his quarterback going to take a lot of design runs near the goal line. That's a little bit of a worry, but we still love him. Garrett Wilson was absolutely heroic with one of the worst quarterback situations that we've seen in the fantasy era over the last couple seasons. So I don't have a problem with him either. AJ Brown's just great. Almost 3,000 receiving yards over the past couple of years, coming off a 100 catch season. And I see no reason why I can't do it again.
Andy, but what about A.J. Brown saying he's not even the number one receiver on his own team? Do you believe A.J. Brown when he says Devontae Smith is actually the number one receiver? Or is this my take to Denny was this is just ultimate A.J. Brown level mind games? Oh, yeah. Yeah, everyone says Devontae's so good. I think he is the number one receiver. What do you make of that? And it has been nonstop Devontae Smith hype in Eagles camp this summer.
I probably don't need to tell you and Denny that sometimes wide receivers just say some stuff, right? This isn't. I mean, we don't want to get too deep into parsing the odd camp quotes of odd wide receivers, right? It doesn't mean much of anything to me other than that it's flattery for a great player. Devontae Smith is great. I'm probably not going to pair both Eagles receivers later in this draft, but I love Devontae Smith and have collected a lot of him. It's honestly one of the things that we really like about the Eagles is that we kind of know where the ball is going to go. It's not, we don't have to worry about a third receiver, a fourth receiver, or anything like that. The ball is funned to two players.
So you're not a Johnny Wilson believer, huh? What were you going to say, Denny?
I will say that I at this point am leaning AJ Brown over Garrett Wilson because I feel like Garrett Wilson's situation is so tenuous. And yeah, I mean, I guess you could say the same thing. If Hurts went down, then AJ Brown might be in trouble. But I think that the way that AJ Brown's going to be used, moved around a little more, the Eagles offense is not going to be as stale and predictable as it was at the end of last year or throughout last year, really. So I do like that about Brown's situation and Devontae Smith, who, as AJ Brown would tell you, is the true number one.
I do not like being up at 15 where the top two guys, the auto ranks, are Jahmyr Gibbs and Derrick Henry. I want to take a second receiver because I love taking Devin Achane in the second round. He's not going to fall to me. I really do not think, as much as I love Devin Achane, I can take him over Jahmyr Gibbs, despite the questions I have about Jahmyr Gibbs. Denny, would you force a receiver pick here like Devontae Adams or Mike Evans, or should I just give in to running back, which we all know in my heart of hearts I want to do anyway?
Don't help him.
You want to do it for sure. Is who are the top receivers?
Henry and Gibbs is what we're looking at here, folks. I don't pretend Kyron Williams doesn't exist.
Right, and as you would. I mean, I guess I'd probably go Henry.
No, I actually don't want. I'm doing it. I can't get there in time. There we go. I'm going way off board. I took Drake London. I want because first off, I want to create. Yeah, okay. I need to create chatter. I wouldn't be a very good draft host if I wasn't like going way off the board. As much as I love Derrick Henry, I've been beating that drum since February. I don't know, man, 15. Like, let's be real. This is modern fantasy football, even 0.5 PPR. I feel like I have to take a wide receiver. Jahmyr Gibbs, I have psyched myself out on. Right? I feel like he needs like an inside straight to repeat last season. Denny and I have talked about that in the podcast. But Drake London, kind of a panic pick, and not loving it. No, and
I do
Andy
love that-
uproariously laughs. Who did you take, Andy, after me?
I do love that you filibustered for a minute there and then took a player that you hadn't mentioned.
Yeah.
Like you listed everybody that was currently on my screen, and then you took somebody.
That's just good, solid drafting, to be honest. Is you want to think about who you're taking from a maximum of 3 seconds.
Excellent misdirection there. Had me really thrown. No, I took Henry there. And Henry's been a very, I know we don't love the age.
He's someone we love to overthink, as I literally just did live on camera.
You just did it.
Yeah. I mean, Derrick Henry could easily score. Easily is probably a little strong, but Derrick Henry could score 20 touchdowns this year.
Yeah.
Derrick Henry could I think pretty easily lead the NFL in touchdowns this year. He's just in a fantastic situation. I don't need to convince people of that. So I think that
is he though? What about this offensive line missing 3 starters? We all assume they're just going to keep on keeping on. It doesn't matter. Lamar's gravity, this and that. I'm just saying, man, I get it aesthetically. Henry lining up next to Lamar Jackson. I'm excited too, but it really does seem like if you look at the Ravens, that's a pretty massive question mark at the line of scrimmage, and the entire community is just like, they'll figure it out.
Yeah.
I will say, Ian, they usually do figure it out. The Ravens are one of the best teams, like papering together solutions.
They are.
A lot of that's like blind faith by me. But I just think like even in end times, Derrick Henry, Derrick Henry's obviously done type campaign still results in like 11 touchdowns. And so like, maybe he's not the league winner. Some of us would like to believe. I have a very hard time believing he could be a league loser second round, but it's not a very positive mentality for your drafting either. So I don't know.
Pat spent all free agency saying Derrick Henry's got to go to Baltimore. If he goes, it's over for the league. And then he has a chance. He has a chance to double down and to be consistent. And he goes with Drake London. So
some would say it's curious. Some would say it's curious.
Drake London is one of those guys, though, where like if you look on, some of the best ball sites or even higher stakes, I mean, he is a top 10, top 11 wide receiver there. It's more Yahoo and ESPN where he's not. So RotoPat, I'll give it to you. I did not think the London pick was a quote unquote bad.
What do you think of London versus Chris Olave, which is what it comes down to a lot?
London.
So these split second decisions, like one thing will pop into your mind a lot of time. And this is not a bit. I was considering Chris Olave versus Drake London. The thing that popped in my head was, man, Derek Carr had a lot of weird Chris Olave energy last year. And like he needed to basically be ordered to target Chris Olave near the end of the season, which he then did a lot. And they finished strong. But I do not love that Derek Carr, Chris Olave connection. So, of course, I gambled on the Kirk Cousins, Drake London connection that I've never seen. I'm sure it'll just be amazing.
I
think they're pretty even, but go ahead.
The whole quarterback situation in Atlanta, I think, is pretty solid because if Cousins, gets dinged up, if he's not fully back from the Achilles or whatever, if he aggravates that injury, I think Michael Penix can be very friendly for fantasy. I think that he can distribute. He can be that point guard distributor in a pass-heavy offense with 3 receivers out at all times. I think this Falcons offense is going to be fun either way.
I'm really I feel like the Falcons have a bit of a Jets problem too, where there's not much depth there. And if there's one injury, the whole operation just gets like a little off kilter and like it could go south a lot quicker than people are expecting. But also the weird similarity where they're both coming off torn Achilles.
Yeah. And
I mean, it could also start slow, right? Because it's one of those situations where like all the most important things are new. And so oftentimes that leads to a pretty rough September. We always talk ourselves into these teams where like, wow, new quarterback, new OC that we like. It's all adults now instead of last year's mess. But that takes time, and it can take an uncomfortable amount of time for fantasy purposes too, right? Like that might be 3 or 4 weeks before it's really humming.
In 3 or 4 weeks, like this is why I was telling people about players who are injured at the beginning of the season. Like, oh, he's only injured 3 weeks. AKA 25% of the fantasy regular season. And like it gets late early out there in fantasy drafts. And my whole strategy in ruins. I took Drake London praying that Devin Achane would fall. and he just went.
That's kind of what I wonder about Jonathan Brooks too, Pat. It's like, well, he'll be there when it matters. It's like, okay, so we have a running back that we hope is good coming off an ACL injury on an offense that we all kind of think is going to be terrible. Like, I'm not exactly seeing the whole like league winning path to Jonathan Brooks. It's like, okay, I get it. First running back selected and everything, but he's, going next to guys that are also going to be racking up touches and I don't know, aren't coming off a devastating injury and not missing a quarter of the season. So call me old fashioned, but I kind of like Denny's rule, man. Sometimes the old boring Devin Singletary isn't the worst option.
There you go.
Ian, you left out that Jonathan Brooks has, of course, never played NFL football before, too.
That's true.
We know that he'll be fine eventually. I just don't know when. I will say that I think folks are a little too savvy on a guy like Brooks. Like he's going at RB27 right now on Fantasy Pros, and it's like, what? Wait, I thought we should get more of a discount here. I feel like I would be into him if he was going at RB40, but Ian's right. I think there are guys around him, running backs around him, who I'd much rather have.
Just in shambles, by the way. Well, I'm not in shambles. I've wanted to take DJ Moore. I'm looking for reasons to take DJ Moore in drafts, and it's gotten a little easier. I'm not trying to poke fun at the man, but ever since I've learned that Keenan Allen is large, it's gotten a little easier to click draft on DJ Moore. And like, all right, listen, the competition's a rookie who's never played. He is a top 10 pick. And Keenan Allen, who was just given up, like they traded him to the Midwest one time. It's like, whatever. It's like,
he put 25 pounds on him.
He introduced the Polish sausage, and it's suddenly game over.
Again, I just want to say, as a dad, I get it. It happens. Yeah. What are you talking about, Andy? It's impossible for you to look at you. You look like you're 25 years old.
Andy's the kind of guy I would go to a conference. Like I'm struggling to get up and get down. Like, what time does they stop serving breakfast? And they're like 10 o'clock. I'm like struggling to get down there. And Andy's like, I just went for a run.
Yeah, Andy runs 11 miles a day.
He does.
I never talk it up at that conference, but like somebody is always outing me. Lauren Carpenter or someone is always like in the lobby telling everyone that they saw Andy running in the morning. It's unfair. I'm nobody's been treated as harshly as me. I'll tell you that.
No one has ever had a tougher decision to make than me just now between Josh Jacobs, Joe Mixon, Rashad White, and James Cook. My heart says Rashad White, but my head says I've taken 3 receivers to start. I'm going to
No one's heart has ever said Rashad White. That's a wild thing to
sorry.
say. You will not hear a wilder thing on this show.
You will, because I meant James Cook, actually. My heart I'm sorry, my heart says James Cook. Just a little too worried about Ray Davis and that they have him typecast as the third down back, James Cook. I'm taking Josh Jacobs. I'm trying to take some meat and potato touches behind my receiver start. Let the slings and arrows follow now.
You should have leaned into it, Pat. You should have. Who'd you take? You took Jacob. You should have leaned into the wide receiver thing.
Yeah, there were some pretty good receivers.
Well, look, if Jacobs goes from being the worst running back in the league, arguably in almost any metric, to one of the best, I mean that pick's gonna be great.
Hey, sure, Ian. Everything looks bad if you remember it. My favorite quote from The Simpsons. And sure, Josh Jacobs' 2023 is the worst thing you've ever seen if you remember it. But, I don't. I don't remember anything from last season. I did remember that later today, 4 p.m. Eastern on the Fantasy Football Happy Hour, Matthew Berry is going to announce his ride or die pick for the 2024 season. It's all part of our Fantasy Football Marathon today, which will culminate later this evening with our annual mock draft broadcast. Some of us may or may not be in that mock draft broadcast. It's going to be amazing stuff. True all-star crew, Yahoo, Fantasy Life, Rotoworld, and some of our friends. It's going to be amazing stuff. It's going to be amazing time. Way more amazing than taking Josh Jacobs in the 4th round. So what are we working on here? I'm going to look at some of these teams. Enough about my team. We don't need to, guys. We just don't really need to talk about my team that much. I just think, I'm a giving guy. I want to talk about other teams. I'm trying to figure out how to pull them up. Denny, who do you have though?
So right at the 2-3 turn, I took Devontae Smith and DK Metcalf. Obviously, I've talked on the Rotoworld Football Show a lot this offseason about how I think most, if not all, of the Seahawks are being undervalued, underdrafted. That includes obviously the wide receiver 1 in Metcalf. And then I talked, about the Eagles' offense under Kellen Moore. We actually covered that on the most recent Rotoworld show. So Devontae Smith and Metcalf, I think, are a decent comeback from being forced to take Christian McCaffrey number 1 overall. Although I will say, if I had taken Justin Jefferson number 1 like I wanted to, having Jefferson, Smith, and Metcalf, that would be pretty sweet.
Yeah, I will say with DK Metcalf, Devontae Smith, I started receiver. My receivers are at least all the number 1 receiver on their own team. Devontae Smith, of course, even though we just debated it, probably still pretty clearly the number 2 receiver on the Eagles. And I just find it a little curious.
Well, I mean, that's the price you pay. You number 1 overall, you take a running back, you're going to be like scraping bottom like pretty quickly at receiver.
You are. Speaking of, I'm assuming you're taking another receiver right here, or are you going to try to snag a running back value as you're on the clock at 4 and 5?
Yeah. I'm not even going to look at running backs. No, that's not good process. You should always look at all of the positions just to make sure. And absolutely not. I'm not going to take any.
Nope. Yeah, all right, that's fair.
So I mean, you have
Diggs, Dell, Zay Flowers,
Yeah.
Terry McLaurin, who apparently doesn't have a backup. Christian Kirk, who's got the red Q next to his name. Deontay Johnson, another red Q.
all right.
If I see a red Q, I just automatically don't.
Look,
draft
I
him.
actually think that Diggs can badger his way into 1,300 yards and like 8 touchdowns. Can force the issue with his second-year quarterback. So I'm taking him as my wide receiver 3. Which
another
is
guy who's not the clear-cut number 1 receiver.
Which is not so bad. Who is then? Who is?
Terry McLaurin, Christian Kirk, Zay Flowers, Deontay Johnson,
I don't want to hear about
Rashee
McLaurin.
Rice.
I don't want to hear him. No, Kirk's off the board for me completely. Flowers.
Let's be real. I've never, my entire life, I've never taken Christian Kirk.
Last round, Christian Kirk still there, and Denny's like,
Now, listen, Christian Kirk, part-time player. Tank Dell, part-time player. I'm taking Deontay Johnson, who should see 175 targets this year.
All right. He does have the red Q. It is pretty minor, though. Our next on-camera drafter, Mr. Ian Hartitz. Let's see how Ian's team is shaking up. Greg Dortch, wide receiver 1, curious, not actually on the team. He has Patrick Mahomes, Devontae Adams, Bijan Robinson, Isaiah Pacheco. Let's ask you about the early quarterback, Ian, because, in these industry drafts, it's a game of chicken a lot of times, like who can be the latest to take a quarterback. Like, I know the greatest player of his generation is on the board there, Patrick Mahomes. But yeah, I'm going to take Christian Kirk instead. Is this like a point of emphasis for you this year, or was this Mahomes the right pick at the right time? How are you approaching early quarterback this season?
I was cool with where he was hanging out. Didn't see any wide receivers I needed to have. And, the fact I only have 1 wide receiver through 3 rounds means my team is dead anyway. So I was just kind of like, adding someone like Patty Mahomes, maybe not too shabby. But let's see. Anthony Snag Rashee Rice. That's a great pick over there. So there goes that idea. I'll add Scary Terry to the squad now. As you guys said, no backups in Washington. So got to feel good about that. But I will say, as much as, playing best ball in some of these leagues, like the wide receivers fly off the board, the more I do get into Yahoo and ESPN ADP, man, you can find some value late. So not to, I guess I will give some secrets away to you guys. But I mean, like Brian Thomas Jr. going outside the top 130 picks. It's like people just haven't seen the rookies before. So some of these first rounders are legit available in the final few rounds. So, certain formats I will be trying to go 4 or 5 wide receivers early, but just the more of these redraft teams I get, man, if I don't have a couple running backs, as sinful as it feels, man, I just don't like the, don't love the prospect of having Chase Brown be my RB2 on every team out there. So got Bijan, got Pacheco, and, we'll see if old man Devontae can help pull this wide receiver room together.
By the way, you took Terry McLaurin right after I added into my queue. That is not allowed because my queue is live here on the screen. So if I add a player to a queue, that means they're not allowed to be taken. Sorry, Denny Carter, you were saying.
Yeah, Pacheco. Did you end up with Pacheco?
Yes.
I like that pick. I feel like his role in the KC offense is not fully, but like baked into his ADP. Andy Reid saying that he can do it all. Jerick McKinnon finally gone from the Chiefs. CEH being CEH. I feel like, especially the way that running backs are used in the passing game in the red zone and then inside the 10-yard line in Kansas City, Pacheco he could have one of those seasons where he catches 8 touchdowns, and that would be crazy. That would launch him into top 3, top 2 stratosphere. And I don't think that his upside is baked in at all into his ADP.
At the risk of agreeing too much with Denny on this program, I also wanted to underscore the value on Pacheco there. Like he went in the second round. I think he went in the second round here, which feels early relative to where he was going. A month ago, 2 months ago in early drafts, and in some of the best ball drafts. But man, that's another guy. I described it with Henry having a path to leading the league in touchdowns. Isaiah Pacheco has a path to leading the league in touchdowns as well. It's obviously a great offense. He was a huge offseason winner. Like sometimes we just don't pay attention to the situations where they didn't do anything terribly notable in the backfield other than like retain some guys and let McKinnon go. And that's a huge win for Pacheco, a player that I thought we all loved. Like there's a real chance that we're drafting him in the first round next year.
Wow. Yeah. Well, to you guys' point on Pacheco, Denny was really making this point. It's the path to greater receptions is not just there by the lack of competition. Like he has already caught a pretty fair amount of passes.
Yeah.
For like a guy who you think of as like a rugged early down tackle breaker, they've been very comfortable targeting him.
Like if Nick Chubb's the most pure runner in the league, Pacheco is probably the most like impure rusher. So I get it. He runs like he's pissed off at the ground, but yeah, everything's going his way. He's, would we be that surprised if the Chiefs offense, is topping the league in scoring? No. So don't love having the quarterback, running back on the same team, which I just now realized I did. So that part of it isn't ideal, but less of a big deal when we are just one, doing a mock, and two, not in some, big 100,000 people best ball tournament. So yeah, try and draft players from good scoring offenses. What a novel idea.
Yeah, Denny, I mean, it's not a huge deal when you think the offense can average 30 to 35 points a game either, right? Like we just want shares of the Chiefs.
100%.
Yeah. Except for Denny, he says there's no difference between good and bad Chiefs. He thinks that Patrick Mahomes has thrown the final deep ball of his career.
Sky Moore was good process. Yeah,
Sky Moore was good process. I'm itching to make a terrible process pick here, and I'm just looking at the receivers. Chris Godwin, too boring. Jaden Reed, like I ain't reading all that. Like there's too many variables there.
There are a lot.
I see Christian Watson, and I just think the lab. They went to the lab. They fixed the hammy. I want some big plays after behind my workhorse receivers, Garrett Wilson, Drake London, DJ Moore. Don't really like any of the running backs on the board right now. I guess I could make a case for Kamara. I think I'm going to go Christian Watson over his teammate Jaden Reed with the higher ADP because I just want to add some like matchup flipping ability to my – I don't know why I'm doing this. I took Christian Watson, though, as my wide receiver 4. And Jaden Reed could be the steadier option, could have the much better PPR floor or half PPR floor. But yeah, I like my workhorse receivers, and I'm adding Christian Watson as kind of like my first matchup flipper. Like, yes, he might give me a 0, but he also might score 2 44-yard touchdowns. Sure. And then I've won the week, and I love it. It's
pretty great that we've had a relatively quiet preseason from Christian Watson, right? I think that's all we really wanted is, and everybody read the stories about how, oh yeah, hey, I've got my hamstrings fixed, as if that's a thing that is easily done. But so far, like he's not dinged. He's fine. And I don't think anybody needs convincing that when Christian Watson is healthy, he's just a different sort of athlete. He is different from anybody else in that receiving core. So I think that was a pretty legit pick, and I've got him ahead of Reed, which I
do too, actually.
Yeah. Like you just ask yourself, like, what does it look like if this guy really hits this year? And I just think it's better for Watson.
I mean, Matt LaFleur said the other day that he wants to vomit when he hears someone ask who's the wide receiver 1, which is very dramatic, but it is. I mean, I think it illustrates that the Packers have no plan to feature one guy every single week. And good luck to us, by the way, as we do this for a living, to predict which guy is going to be featured week to week. We're going to have to look at man coverage versus zone versus this versus that versus deep. But Watson has way more weekly upside than Reed as long as he stays healthy. And I think that he will. I think that they have figured out this asymmetrical stride that he's had and that has really ruined his hamstrings. Hopefully he can stay on the field.
I just stick a divining rod in the air, and that'll tell me who scored the more points that week. Andy, please be old enough yet to know what that is, Andy.
You've come to the right guy, yeah.
You may be wondering where I have Christian Watson ahead of Jaden Reed, and that is in my Rotoworld Draft Guide rankings. And the Rotoworld Draft Guide is here for you during the peak of draft season. And this year it has added features. It's available exclusively through a new partnership with Matthew Berry and Ian Hartitz's Fantasy Life. Get a Fantasy Life Plus subscription and receive the Rotoworld Draft Guide to help you crush your competition. Use promo code ROTO10 for 10% off and unlock extensive fantasy, DFS, and betting tools now. Go to NBCsports.com/fantasylife to learn more.
By the way, that is the company name, Matthew Berry and Ian Hartitz's Fantasy Life.
I know. Listen, I read what they give me, and it says here like the legal name of the company is Matthew Berry and Ian Hartitz, so that's why I read it.
Has Ian drafted Dortch yet? Has that happened?
I know. Yeah, listen,
it's gotta happen. That's
getting close to false advertising territory. With many different government agencies. Like
I feel like now people go out of their way to like take Dortch too early in drafts, so I don't get them. So it's almost like this next level chess move, hyping them up. So now I actually get some extra value.
Ian, it's funny. Every summer, there's a few moments that just go viral on Twitter, and for better or worse, the second it happens, the ADP is changing. Yes. And friend of the show, Johnny Venerable, tweeted like the most amazing route anyone has ever run during not a real game and Greg Dortch the other day in the joint practices. And like you saw that and just like, ADP is, without exaggerating, the ADP will go up 2 rounds after that.
I mean, people are wondering if Marvin Harrison Jr. has even been practicing with the amount of Greg Dortch propaganda we always got coming our way. So I love it, man. He really is fun to watch. I mean, Kyler said it himself, guys. If he was 6'3", he'd be a top 5 wide receiver. So, it's Marvin. Trey McBride. Don't get it twisted in that offense, but a man can dream, even a short man.
More fantasy points than Michael Wilson this season. I guess, is that an easy bet to make at this point? The other outside wideout on the Cardinals.
It's close. Let's see. Who am I picking here?
Yeah, who are you picking?
You know what? I'm going to pick the fastest guy alive who happens to be a teammate of my quarterback. So Xavier Worthy, come on down.
I almost took Worthy instead of Watson. I mean, Ian, how do you think that Chiefs receiver situation is going to shake out where 2 major variables now with the 2 top dogs? The suspension doesn't seem to be coming for Rashee Rice this year, to be frank. But Marquise Brown, just talk about a guy who I felt like finally needed to just have a normal year. Like Marquise Brown's had so much go wrong, like not a lot of injuries, but he's just always in weird offensive setups. Like guys kind of under-delivered a lot. I'm just like, just get him through a normal training camp. Of course, he bangs his shoulder. And
first play makes the catch. Nah, it sucks, man. I was drafting a lot of Marquise too. So the one interesting note, I forget which beat reporter said it, but kudos to whichever one of them you are. But it was with the wide receivers, basically saying Justin Watson, kind of taking Marquise Brown's spot in the starting lineup. I guess Justin Ross catches 10 touchdowns of practice, but just can never actually get real first team drafts. But the other 2 clear-cut starting receivers were Rashee Rice and Xavier Worthy. So as much as I think we all still have, especially Denny, some of that Sky Moore PTSD here, like Worthy seems to be locked into the starting lineup right now, again, in an offense that we're expecting fireworks out of. So, between Worthy and Rice and even Hollywood once he's back, man, answer, maybe it's just yes. I mean, 2 years ago, even post-Tyreek, Juju Smith-Schuster in the year 2022 was, I believe, the wide receiver 32 in PPR points per game. Cole freaking Hardman had top 36 numbers before he got hurt that season. So, I think we'll look back on the 22 and 23 years. It's almost like a blip on the radar in terms of these Chiefs wide receivers not giving us a ton of production. So arguably like a Miami Dolphins running back, like last year, kind of correlation, because we knew there was going to be points. We just didn't exactly know who was going to score them. And accordingly, the price of everyone is depressed a bit. So, I know these muddled situations, it is annoying to try to figure out, but when the price is so low accordingly, man, I think those are good ones to buy.
I just want to say real quick, I think you're mistaking me for Pat Kerrane as far as the Sky Moore.
Right. That idiot millionaire, Pat.
I have never, right, exactly. What does he know?
Yeah.
I've never drafted him, and as soon as I saw he was from, Western Michigan, he went to school. I said, come on, guys, we can't be serious here.
Listen, if Pat Kerrane is so smart, why isn't he working for Rotoworld?
That's my question.
That's a great question.
Tell me that. I want to know that. If Pat Kerrane's so smart,
no one will answer it.
No one will. Denny and I ask every day, and people are like, why are you still talking about this? Move on. And he, quote, still appears to be one of your good friends. I'm like,
we ask while crying. Yes. Sometimes we're crying.
I'm back on the clock. Denny, in round 7, I took Jalen Warren. Is that a 2 online pick, or is that even a not online
2
enough pick?
online.
Yeah, I don't know.
2 online.
Jalen Warren.
Yeah, I mean,
7.
look, it really does. Look, I do. That's a good point, Pat. If you're, entering your office league or whatever, family league, nobody knows who Jalen Warren is. Okay, just remember that. Okay, but they're not a bunch of sickos like us who literally haven't thought of anything else but Jalen Warren for the past 90 days. Okay, so just remember that. I don't think you reach for him here, but I do think that folks should get a feel for their draft room, because a guy like Jalen Warren could be very undervalued depending on the savvy of your league mates.
Denny, I just logged off and took David Njoku because the touchdowns are good.
I'm actually mad because I wanted him. But
all right, yeah. I mean, David Njoku, a guy, just no buzz, no discussion. Are people expecting him to fall off from last year, or is David Njoku just a settled matter? He's one player. Like when I drafted him, I don't think I've said David Njoku's name out loud in 2 or 3 weeks. Just someone who's not being talked about this summer. And is that something that should be rectified, or is it perfectly fine to just not talk about David Njoku, like the tight end 9, and then just move on? Anybody have any thoughts on this?
I think he's actually I feel like he's the last tight end on the board who is very clearly one of the let's say top 2 receiving options on his team, which is of course a key to actual fantasy relevance at the position. Position's kind of deep. Another thing about Njoku is he's somewhat quietly, he's probably a top 10 athlete in the league. He's one of those guys who could have been pro in any number of things. He was the country's best high jumper when he came out of high school.
Wow.
He's a wild athlete. He was a 7-foot high jumper. And he's coming off a terrific year. They paid him. He's coming off a terrific year, mostly with Joe Flacco. Obviously the only thing that you worry about is that Deshaun Watson hasn't been good at football in 6 years. And it would be great to see. It would be great to see that change. But again, he got it done in pretty lousy circumstances last year. Pretty inventive play caller situation there and play design. So we like a lot of things about the offensive environment. I like Njoku, and I think he's the last tight end on the board that I actively want, right? And I feel I feel like I really have to tell myself a story about everybody after him.
No, Andy, I couldn't agree more. That is why I took him. Would you guys agree with the take that this year tight end is a little bit deeper at the top, where last year it was 5 or 6 deep, maybe. And then there was a lot of interesting guys, though, in the 11 to 20 range. This year, I feel like it's kind of 10 or 11 deep, a lot deeper than last year at the high end. But then in the flyer range, there's just not very many compelling guys at all. And it just feels like a year where I need to come away with someone who ADP-wise, rankings-wise, is a top 10 or 11 tight end. Whereas last year, if I missed on one of those top 5 or 6 guys, I was kind of using 2 of my final picks and tight ends and letting them battle royale on my bench. But this year, I feel like it's the opposite. It's a good year to actually use a little draft capital and tight end and not be taking the tight end flyers. But is that a good or bad take? Anyone want to field this?
It also feels like a little bit of a transitional year at tight end, right? Because because Kelsey turning 35, obviously he could still be the tight end 1, but we don't have a lot of years in the history of the tight end position. And you can literally take this back 60 years. There is always one very clear, alpha tight end in the league, right? It was Kelsey, it was Gronk, it was Gates, it was Gonzalez. You can take that all the way back to John Mackey and Mike Ditka, right? You can take it back a long way. And we're in a transitional period now, and there's no way that Kelsey holds on to this for another 3 years. It might last another season, but it's not going to be forever. And it does legit, I think there's 6 guys where I can make a pretty legitimate argument that they might finish as the tight end 1. And I don't, I've been doing this forever. I don't remember another season when I could have said that. You might have a strong argument for one of 3 players, but literally down to Dalton Kincaid, George Kittle, there's a bunch of guys who could finish as the overall tight end 1 this year.
I will say the Kelsey thing makes me nervous because of age. Also, because the Chiefs don't really try actively until late in the season and into the playoffs. So that makes me a little bit reticent to take Kelsey. But I have seen him fall in some drafts too, the 4th round, even the end of the 4th round. I'll take him there. I'm pretty happy with that. And I will say, I've said on the X platform, formerly known as Twitter, the Chiefs are probably not going to hit a bunch of downfield shots because defenses have said, no way, we're playing 2 safeties 50 yards off the line of scrimmage to make sure that doesn't happen. But what I will say is that having Marquise Brown when he's healthy, having Xavier Worthy get downfield and clear out space in the middle could be really big for a guy like Kelsey or for Pacheco if he's out there running a lot of routes.
Denny, I was hoping you were just going to keep talking while I was on the clock.
I'm
so
sorry.
I didn't.
Well, I mean,
so I didn't have to talk people through me about to select Devin Singletary.
Oh, you did it. Yeah, after literally weeks of belittling me on air about Devin Singletary, you go ahead and take him.
Quite literally true. And when we talked to Pat Leonard on the Rotoworld football show yesterday, and he was just like, yeah, I don't know if it's going to work, but none of the other guys are really earning touches right now. And two, I've stopped trying to fight Devin Singletary City Hall. The guy gets on the football field and he's like, this is my home. Like, this is where I'm from. This is where I live. Like, this might be a game to you, but it's a lifestyle to me. And then the coaches just cannot take him off the field ever. Like,
bro, teammates love him. Neighbors starting to fight out of nowhere. Singletary's throwing his mouthpiece in and running over there.
So I took Devin Singletary, and thank God it's a mock. Not taking Devin Singletary in any real drafts.
Was that impression? Was that like a special voice that you have for Devin Singletary, or is that like a generic player voice?
That's generic. Yeah, that's a generic one. But speaking of mock versus real drafts, let's talk about draft format for a second, because I talked at the beginning. We are doing a PPR. I didn't really necessarily explain like the difference between half PPR and full PPR. Or is there a difference? Like, do you guys have a strong take on this? Do you adjust your draft approach when it's full point PPR, or just half? Or if they're giving you any points for receptions, you kind of just start targeting the receptions and like valuing up catches? Or is there actually a difference in drafting mindset? Should there be for half PPR versus full PPR? Who wants to take this one?
Well,
there's no difference. I mean,
there is a difference with some players, right? So you have a guy, like Alvin Kamara, like in standard, I'm absolutely not interested in Alvin Kamara. In half PPR, maybe somewhat, but in PPR, I can get a little scammy Kamara going. That's interesting to me, right? And so 15 checkdowns to Kamara in a given week, that it doesn't even matter if he doesn't do anything with the ball. That's good stuff. So I like that. Some tight ends are better in PPR. You have the Jake Fergusons, the Tyler Conklins, the Zach Ertz of the world, like guys who catch the ball and fall down. That works with PPR. Half PPR, that's way less appealing. You want a tight end who occasionally has a chance for a big play, which none of those guys do.
Anyone else have anything to add on half PPR versus full PPR? I will say I don't generally change my approach. Denny is right. It becomes like maybe it should just be viewed as a compelling tiebreaker, not something that's really changing your mentality or your mindset or even your tiers, but like the tiebreaker being like, yeah, like this guy's declining, but whatever. The PPR machine prints the money either way. Like, I don't care if it's counterfeit bills or not. So yeah, that's probably the best way to view it, is more of a tiebreaker than anything else.
Yeah, I think you guys are generally right. Like there's probably only, I don't know, there might be a dozen players, it might be like 15 players, something like that. I don't have a list handy where I will significantly change a rank and where I'll see their name in the draft queue and I'll be like, oh, Kamara was actually the first one that came to mind, right? Where like I'm not that interested in most season long leagues, but if we're playing full PPR, I know I'm going to get some really junky, like 12, 15, 20 point performances out of him, where like if you're watching the game, he never pops. You never think, wow, he's having a great game. And then you look at your box score and it's like, oh, I'm winning. And I'm winning because Derek Carr checked down to him, 14 times.
Deontay Johnson, he's a good player. I drafted here. I know this is half PPR. I'm less bullish on him in this format. Deontay Johnson, is not an incredibly explosive player, but he gets open. The ESPN Open Score, other metrics say that he's a guy who is a good target for quarterbacks. That's why they got him for Bryce Young. So I think that he's a PPR scammy type player who I would target much more aggressively in PPR formats.
By the way, Anthony Reimer, a good Twitter X follow, helping us draft here, chimed in saying it is curious that I've spent weeks saying it's totally over. for Devin Singletary on our podcast. And then I did select Devin Singletary in the 9th round of the draft. And the answer to that is that every player, it is important to remember, you should never fully remove someone from your board.
That's true.
At some point, everyone becomes a value.
Yes.
Devin Singletary there, just looking at what was out on the board, I'm like, whatever, man. I don't like Devin Singletary. Pat Leonard even expressed skepticism he would survive the season as a starter. But again, the young guys are not exactly seizing the day. I'll just bank those touches. Maybe at some point I'm cutting Devin Singletary week 8 or 9. Fantasy, it's good, obviously, to take a long-term view. But as we all kind of alluded to at the beginning, you should take a short-term view. Things change so quickly in this game. It's really, really hard to this guy's going to help me in October. Dude, maybe by October you've had 5 season-ending injuries and you can't have a blank bench spot.
Right.
And so do long-term planning as much as you can. But fantasy redraft, the window in your head should be 3 to 4 weeks, I would say. And all I know is in October, September, Devin Singletary is getting the ball.
Singletary was like an RB1 for the entire second half of last season.
Doesn't matter.
Better career numbers than Saquon. Doesn't matter. Got
No,
16.5 million in free agency.
Doesn't matter.
Hey.
I know. Ian, I'm with you. He's not flashy, so the Zoomers are not going to like him. But I like Singletary, and everywhere he goes, he kind of just gets it done. Now, Pat Leonard, when we had him on the show, I think he started off our running back discussion with, he said, look, people forget, last time Singletary played for Brian Daboll, he literally never saw the ball. And I frantically went to go look back at his box scores.
Right.
And I said, wait, he had over 1,000 yards. So, total yards, I should say. And Brian Daboll said he knows our system inside and out. I think these all point to Singletary being, not inspiring, but a good enough player to plug into your lineup.
Well, Denny, sorry,
real quick.
you go, Ian.
Her typical dead zone running back, but he goes in round 10 instead of round 3.
Yes.
That's all.
And I think what Pat Leonard was alluding to is a lot of coaching staffs are in denial about how much they're going to need Devin Singletary. They don't want to get Devin Singletary on the field. They wanted it to be Zach Moss, or they wanted it to be Dameon Pierce. But then when those guys failed, Devin Singletary gets on the field, and then he's just so good at the little things. And I think the Giants are the first coaching staff in a while that just acknowledge it's a transition year for us at running back. We'll pay Devin Singletary. No, he's not going to be above average player, but he can kind of be maybe a Jamal Williams, in that he's going to be really good at the little things. He's not going to hurt us, maybe even if he's not actively helping us.
Right.
And you don't usually go in the season planning to feature Devin Singletary. The Giants kind of ended up in that position. The Giants kind of famously misjudged the running back free agent market by their own admission.
Yes.
And it's they're kind of stuck with Devin Singletary. And Devin Singletary is never plan A, but he was the Giants' plan B, and they're probably going to stick with that plan B. I don't know why we talk about Devin Singletary for 10 more minutes.
I just love that your previous month of analysis on the platform has all been misdirection, so that you could score a modest value on Devin Singletary.
So we had to drive his ADP down.
Well, in a shocking ADP development, Odell Beckham Jr. has been the #1 wide receiver available for 4 rounds. People we're in a sharp room, guys.
Yeah, Andy, why don't you reach out to someone? I heard you work at Yahoo.
I do want to say that, man, if this were, I have to go integrity of the mock, and I have to take a player that I actually like here. But in a normal hometown draft, this is where I definitely take Greg Dortch, because somebody else named their damn team after Greg Dortch. I love blowing up stuff like that. But I'm not gonna do it here. Don't worry, I'll leave him for you. It's fine. It's just a mock, whatever.
Andy sounds very, very sad as he prepares to queue up the worst pick he's ever made. Let's see. Oh, yep, he did. Yep,
that's pretty close.
I did want to say that our discussion with the Lions beat writer on the Rotoworld football show,
Mr. Ben Raven of NLive.com.
Really good. Really good beat writer. Our discussion about Jameson Williams and the hype being incredibly real, according to Ben, made me more bullish on him, made me, more willing to take him in various formats, including this one. I took him as my wide receiver 5, I think it is. And the reason why is because obviously Jameson Williams is going to be involved in the downfield stuff. Okay. He's probably the Lions' only real downfield pass catcher. That's cool. That we know that. But, Ben said he wouldn't be surprised to see intermediate work for Jameson Williams. How much of that, I don't know. But any of that for a guy that explosive who can catch and run like that, that's cool. I mean, that makes me excited about him and makes me think that he's not just a boom bust fantasy option for weekly purposes.
And there are no good players left.
No, they're all gone.
I kind of want to congratulate the fantasy community for actually, like, I feel like we've been remarkably restrained on Jameson Williams. And maybe that's the lesson of the Gabe Davis wars from a few years ago, right? Where like the last game that we saw from this player was so good that we forgot literally everything else that had previously happened in their career. Right. And I honestly, I thought we'd come into this season and Jameson would be like a wide receiver 3, maybe even go higher for some people. I thought Dalton Del Don would have crazy hot takes on Jameson, and it just hasn't happened yet. And that seems like a sign that we're learning.
He is one of those guys, though, where you can talk through why it hasn't happened. First year is a wash coming off the ACO. Then he has the gambling suspension. And during that suspension, he messes up his hamstring in August. The guy has not played a professional football game in September yet in his career. So I don't know. He's going to have a chance to start off. I don't love that I have to say now that Josh Reynolds,
I'm taking
now that Josh Reynolds is out of town. Like whenever you have to say that, that's not a great, following statement that's going to come there. So I acknowledge that, but this isn't some, random guy. He was picked freaking 11th or whatever it was for a reason. Former 5-star, balls out of Bama. So yeah, I'm going to take a Ty Chandler now. So that's how much I know.
Jameson Williams, he's on the third year Nico Collins breakout plan. That's all I can say. And I will say it's at least been what you would term a drum beat, where every report has been the same. Like Jameson Williams, the first 2 years, for all the reasons Ian laid out, it was total wash. For some reason, it's the opportunity of a lifetime. Some people just aren't ready as rookies. And Jameson Williams wasn't ready because of an injury, so that wasn't his fault. The gambling thing, a humongous lapse in judgment, but it seems like the narrative from both the media and the coaching staff at Lions camp is that he gets it now. The light has come on. He's practicing at a different speed. He's playing at a different speed. Mm-hmm. They desperately need him. So the need is there too, because behind Jameson Williams, it gets pretty grim pretty fast, unless you're a big Khalif Raymond believer like Denny Carter. But
you took him, Andy. You said you weren't going to.
No, man. Well, but then you started pushing back against that, and I'm like, oh man, I'm definitely taking Dortch.
I almost took Dortch too. I didn't want to be that guy, but someone needed to do it.
I had this whole plan in my mind. He was going to fall to the last round just because everyone was going to be nice to me.
Ian, dude, I was going to take him in my next pick. Just so you know. I mean, I'm actually mad at myself that I didn't already take him.
Was it the most calamitous pick of the draft that I took Darnell Mooney over Greg Dortch?
Let me look up that word first and get back to you.
Darnell Mooney, I'm doing the classic. He's just a dot connection pick. The dot connecting being, I look at the Falcons receiver core, I look at their skill core, and I'm like,
right,
there's 3 good guys, and then there's no one else. And they gave Darnell Mooney a surprising amount of money. He's never played with a real quarterback, really. I mean, DJ Moore had a big year with Justin Fields, but Justin Fields seemed like the classic, wasn't going to support more than one wide receiver. Kirk Cousins has made a way of life of supporting 3 to 4 pass catchers. Like if Kirk Cousins can kind of make KJ Osborne a thing, I'm just like, how could he not make Darnell Mooney a thing? And Darnell Mooney, the ADP just never developed. He's 12th, 13th round, basically every draft. And I don't know why I'm talking about Darnell Mooney.
Well, you're coping. You're coping.
I am coping. yes, it's better than crying.
Yeah, you're going to be crying soon.
I will, yeah.
But it's fair. Like there's not a lot of number 2 receivers still on the board. Certainly
there you go.
That are tied to interesting offenses,
especially with Xavier Legette now gone. If he's still alive, I know he's been injured. So.
Now it's supposedly minor. Xavier Legette, everything been going so well for Xavier Legette until that leg injury too. That's just a real shame.
Right. The guy came out after his first practice and said, "Wow, I'm not ready for this."
That's a bit discouraging.
That was that quote. I mean, he seems like a very upfront and honest and nice guy, but wow, that quote was bad.
Yeah, well, there's no place for that in the NFL.
Hey, if I just said, though, first round wide receiver, one of the most athletic guys ever, and he's available in the second to last round of a 14-team draft, I don't know. I've thrown worse starts.
Anytime it can take you half a decade to break out in the SEC, you have to do it. That's what I can say about Xavier Legette. But I can also say we're down to the final 2 rounds. This is only a 14-round mock. We're not doing kickers. We're not doing defenses. I kind of wish I hadn't already taken a quarterback. I think late round quarterback is back because it's the 13th round, and Jared Goff, Tua, Caleb Williams, Trevor Lawrence, Kirk Cousins, Matthew Stafford, Justin Herbert, Geno Smith, Aaron Rodgers, Deshaun Watson are all still there. Like, if you just miss on those top 3 or 4 quarterbacks this year, you don't really have an excuse. You don't need to ever reach for quarterback. You need to reach, though, at other positions like what I'm going to do right now. Trying to find a single good player left.
I was my lovely wife is joining her first fantasy football draft for her company soon, and I was just trying to make things as easy as possible because somehow, despite living with me for 5 years, she's still kind of unclear what a quarterback is and things like that. And so I was like, you know what? Let's try to fill out that starting lineup by the end of round 10. And you were drafting 1 quarterback and 1 tight end, no matter what. Because if you draft one inside the top 100 picks, they're going to be okay. Take a bunch of running backs and wide receivers, and we'll go from there. Because I feel like the easiest way to mess it up is to go too heavy at tight end or quarterback. Not that it's going to be a great draft, but to your point, Pat, like they're everywhere.
I just took a second tight end. Is it over for me? By the way, took Tyler Conklin.
I will say we used to get in like industry drafts, and Pat, you said it earlier. It was like everybody was just kind of staring at each other. Nobody wanted to be the first person to take a quarterback, and it would be really common for like nobody's got a quarterback, and it's round 9, it's round 10,
yes.
And then like and then we have a mock that doesn't resemble any hometown draft, right? Like that never happens. There's no way you're getting out of like round 3 without a quarterback taken. The one, and I'm glad that you sort of carved out the exception for the top 3 or 4 quarterbacks, because we've seen like all of the all-time seasons in terms of fantasy scoring at quarterback basically since 2019, 2018, beginning with the big Mahomes season. And so I do feel like the rules have changed a little bit, right? Like almost every year there's a sort of lottery ticket season at QB, and sometimes more than one.
Man, some sicko took Braylon Allen. I'm so upset about that.
Is Deneric Prince still the Chiefs number 2, or is CH just getting away with it again? What's the latest update there?
I think it's CH. People are hyped about fullback Carson Steele. Now that's the new hip thing.
It's a really good time to time out into Deneric Prince. That's good.
Someone took Jordan Mason really long ago. Like I read the Kyle Shanahan quote. It sounded to me like Jordan Mason is getting the opportunity to kind of compete for the number 2 job. I never heard Shanny.
I can't believe Shanny pretended he still liked Elijah Mitchell as long as he did. Like, I've never seen a less of a Shanny player, and he was just so brave, putting on a brave face about it. I swear to God, we still. It's like, wow, I never heard a coach say that before. And no, yeah, he doesn't. It's Jordan Mason. It's going to be Jordan Mason.
Oh my gosh, Shanahan actually held up the depth chart and like crossed out Mitchell's name. It was like the circle of trust thing where he just finally removed Mitchell from it.
Ian, I hear that you're bullish on Antonio Gibson, yet.
Boom!
Oh, you just took him.
That's good TV right there.
That's good. Gosh, I was all set, man. I was ready for that one. Oh,
hey, man. He'll be on the cover of Rotoworld waiver wire articles. God forbid Ramondre Stevenson maybe wins the lottery, decides to take the season off,
Man,
Gibson.
Well, hopefully let's producer Adam, let's edit that out.
Denny, it's pretty funny. Denny has he had the first pick, so he also has the last pick, pretending he's not going to just make the worst pick any of us have ever seen.
I'm making the worst pick ever.
Is it Noah Fant? Is it Quentin Johnston? I'm just looking. What might
let's close it with an Iowa tight end.
He's taking Ben Sinnott. Oh my God.
No, you actually can't even guess.
All right, I can't. Lay it on us. Who was it?
Will Shipley.
Eagles RB3. Okay.
No, yeah, exactly. Like that was the class, and we genuinely weren't ready for that.
When you can get the Eagles RB4, you got to get them.
When you can get a guy that will never play an NFL regular season snap.
Stop. Wait a second. No. Shipley has some juice. I've seen enough preseason with Shipley. He has a little juice.
Yeah, I'm sure he does.
We've always said that preseason, throw the usage out, throw the guys resting out. It's about who makes plays.
What do you don't go by vibes?
Yeah, come on, Ian. You're the ultimate vibes guy there is on Twitter, or X, the platform formerly known as Twitter. You should be.
It's a great gig
with the vibes pick.
What
are the vibes?
Just the vibes.
We're done drafting. Let's see here who Yahoo says has the good teams. I'm in
mine.
8th. Dave Kluge. How do you say Dave's name? I forget how to say
No one
his
knows.
name.
You nailed it.
Kluge projected for
Kluge?
first. Ian Hartitz projected for
But
fourth.
I bet Dave is also nice enough that he would never correct you, no matter what you said.
And I would immediately. Denny Carter 7th. That's actually, you don't ever want to see a Denny team projected out of the bottom 3. That means he didn't follow his process. And
That's right.
Yeah,
That's right.
I'm 8th. Andy's 10th.
I will just point out that like you can see that the teams that are always at the top of the standings in the Yahoo projection, they just take the simple projection for every player on the roster and add it up. So anybody who drafts 2 quarterbacks is going to be at the top.
There you go.
There's the math behind the.
So it sounds like I'm
draft
actually
bill.
number 1.
Yes.
we
actually, that
happy
is
or
what I'm
sad?
saying.
Ian Hartitz, do you like your squad?
Kinda. You know, you guys should definitely trust me for fantasy advice after that reaction.
I know.
But no, it's good. I will say, you know, whenever you are in a 3 wide receiver league like this, and you only have 1 through 4, I mean, certainly playing with fire a little bit. So a bit sharper draft room with going down and getting some of the wide receivers versus ADP. I thought I'd have a little easier time getting guys like Rashee Rice at better spots. So didn't fall quite the way I wanted to there, but still think we're alive, you know, as the projected grades, which again, if they say my team's good, they're great. If not, they're just grades that you should dismiss immediately. So, but no, I'm feeling pretty good. I think, you know, got the onesies elite with Mahomes and Kyle Pitts. Pack and say, oh, look at Tua. Yeah, but when you got Tua, you know, you're bringing a knife to a freaking rocket launcher fight when I got Patrick Mahomes back there. So no, I'm feeling good about the squad.
Andrew Behrens, who wrote all the algorithms for Yahoo. And, how are you feeling about your team?
I feel pretty good given that it was the 9th spot, right? The problem with the 9th spot is you're not getting like a tier 1 wide receiver. You're not getting a tier 1 running back. So like you gotta find a way to have a team strength. I think I was the first person to take a quarterback. I took Josh Allen, paired him with Dalton Kincaid. That is a weirdly attainable combo this year. And I feel like Kincaid is one of those guys who could very well, even though he didn't go to Iowa, could very well have a season where, you know, maybe he's the next guy that we talk about as like that tight end who sort of rules the position for a few years, because pretty good chance he leads the Bills in receptions and targets this year. Kind of an easy button in the offense. It's a great quarterback. So I like that combo. I feel like that gives me a chance to actually like win a position or 2 each week, which again, you got to do if you're going to make the playoffs.
I like the easy button metaphor. Good job by you, Andy.
Denny Carter, we gave you the first word and you horribly botched it with Christian McCaffrey. And we will give you the final word. How you feeling about your team? You did get the best player in fantasy. How you feeling?
Yeah, you know, not too bad actually. So just despite having to take CMC, I think I went 5 straight receivers. So
you did.
I went in no particular order: Diggs, Metcalf, Devontae Smith, Deontay Johnson, and Jameson Williams. I think that, you know, and by the way, there are 2 flex spots here in this league, so I can start all those guys. I feel pretty good about that. I then got my guy, and you know, please have mercy on me, Sean Payton, but I got Javonte Williams, and you know,
he'll be traded to the Cowboys. It's fine.
Thinking that he's going to be, and that might not be bad.
It'd be very, very good.
Thinking he's going to be the lead back, and I desperately want some of that PPR goodness that Sean Payton's offenses provide out of the backfield, even though this is half PPR. And then, you know, and then Dak at quarterback, and then at tight end I have Dallas Goedert, who I think is probably being a little underdrafted. I think, you know, him along with Smith and AJ Brown are probably they don't quite have the new offense kind of baked into their ADPs. That's my thought, at least.
Well, thank you so much to all of our drafters. Thank you to Denny Carter. Thank you to Fantasy Life's Ian Hartitz. Thank you to Yahoo's Andy Behrens, a living legend. And thank you for tuning in. Be sure to tune in for our entire fantasy marathon as we continue Fantasy Day, Fantasy Week here at NBC and Rotoworld. Matthew Berry's Ride or Die coming later. Our mock draft broadcast this evening at 8 p.m. Eastern. So for Andy, for Ian, for Denny, I'm Pat. Thank you so much for tuning in.
Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBCSports.com and Rotoworld.com, and I want to thank you so much for watching whatever it is you just watched, or if nothing else, being too lazy to click out of the autoplay after this video started, after whatever it is you actually wanted to watch finished. But now that you're here, I'd like to take a moment here to ask you respectfully now, okay? I'm asking you respectfully to subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel. You'll get the latest Rotoworld fantasy news headlines, all sorts of great shows, including my own Fantasy Football Happy Hour. So go subscribe now. Again, I'm asking respectfully.